The Q3 property reports are emerging, but what are they revealing? Very pleased to be joined in the studio by the Haus&Haus Managing Director. First Q3 report off the block, Simon Baker.
Very good morning. Thank you for having me.
Some of your competitors have WhatsApped me this morning telling me that theirs are about to come out, but you are indeed first for us.
We've managed to get them out quite early this quarter, which is fantastic. So yeah, and it's all looking very positive still. Really, it sounds like a broken record. But the market certainly have been doing very, very well. I think obviously we've all noticed that Dubai, anyone who's been here and kept their eyes open has noticed that Dubai is very, very busy. Another school year started, lots of schools completely oversubscribed. Traffic seems to be even worse than it was at the start of the year. So all very, very busy and positive for the property market.
Okay, I want to have a look at this report and look at what it's telling us about who we are and what we're doing. Because I think there's a story in this. The villa market outpacing apartments for you for Q3. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I think certainly for the established villa communities, the ones that everyone knows and loves and has been around for 20 years, there's obviously a limited amount of supply. There's not too many new villas being handed over. And the demand is coming, significantly from Europe, for example, where lots of families are moving here. I think the demographics probably shifted a little bit. 20 years ago, it was probably a lot more single people coming purely for work, whereas now people are leaving lots of Western European countries coming for lifestyle, coming for safety and security and all these reasons. So that demand is typically for houses. And if they can afford, if they're in that segment, they're looking at, detached homes, of which that's a very small segment of the market.
So this is what has leapt out for me here. If we look at the top gainers, where we're looking at sort of gaining 20, 30, 43% in the case of the lakes. Yeah. We're looking at, and I mean, that's great if you're on the selling rather than the buying side, obviously. We're looking at some really old school names. The lakes is your best performer, Arabian Ranches, the Meadows, Green Community, DIP. There are a lot of newer, shinier developments on the block. Why are we going for the stuff that's been standing for 18 plus years?
I think I wrote an article called Old is Gold a long time ago for a Property Finder, but it was, I think ultimately people are looking at some of the new communities and they're thinking that maybe they're getting a smaller plot size, smaller gardens, which ultimately means small plots mean there's more properties, within every square kilometre or whatever. So the properties are being packed in more closely. Certainly the newer developments, typically, they cram in a lot more houses. So that means that people are looking back to the older communities, an Arabian Ranches or a Meadows, that you could probably still get a 10,000 or a 15,000 square foot plot as being really valuable, So they're going in, renovating these properties, making the house how they want. And as I always say, you can change the house, but you can't really change where it is. You can't change the plot size. So that's and we've seen a big trend in the last few years of people renovating homes to make the house how they want, but picking the location and the plot size in some of these older communities that maybe are more established. They're more green. Good way to do it is to look on Google Earth and see how green these places are. So yeah, I think that's a big reason for it.
But you're paying for it though. I mean, your standout performer, the Lakes, has 43% year-on-year rise. I'm surprised there's still a villa in the Lakes to sell. Have these things not all been sold 3 times
well,
since
they've probably
COVID?
been, for sure. And actually, interestingly enough, though, when you look at the real data and the real numbers, there isn't so many transactions. The older communities tend to transact less. So, for example, people buy off plan and properties can be sold 2 or 3 times before they're finished. The communities that are now reaching 20 years or older, 20 years of age, typically the transactions aren't that many. So, yes, of course, there'll be a couple of transactions that go upgraded houses that suddenly skew the numbers a little bit because it shows that one might have sold at a lot higher price per square foot. Maybe a family's come from London, they've sold their property in central London, and their comparison, it's all relative, isn't it? But, what they're comparing value for money, suddenly Dubai still feels good value price per square foot. You look at the index we're currently at around 50th. There's a lot of cities in the world that are more expensive per square foot that probably aren't as desirable to live in.
Why aren't developers, and I'm ruling out sort of the high-end lux, sector here where everything's called a farm or a valley or whatever else. But your average mid-build villa, why aren't developers taking note of this and thinking if we just make it a bit bigger, if we just make the green space a bit bigger, we can charge more in the medium sector?
Ultimately, it probably comes down to land prices. So obviously, as Dubai's become more and more popular, and the demand has become bigger, that each parcel of land is suddenly worth a lot more money. And as for a developer to also make a profit, they have to, fit in more property, basically. Giving out huge gardens doesn't necessarily pay the bills if you're a developer. So I think that's a big reason for it. Ultimately, they've bought a plot of land, they've paid X millions or sometimes billions for it, and they need to make a profit on that. So which means that apartments get smaller, townhouses and villas get smaller, or certainly the land parcels get smaller, which is obviously, this is what's in turn helping the values for the older communities.
Is this also what we're seeing play out in the apartment market? Some of the older names, and it's amazing that we're calling Palm Jumeirah an older name in apartments, but there you go. Again, strong performance. If I look at, you've got Dubai Harbour, just 1% growth. I'm going to call that flat. Business Bay, actually a 2% decline.
Yeah. So areas like Business Bay, Business Bay was the top area for off-plan transactions in the last quarter, followed by JVC and also Maritime City being a new, waterfront community right next to Dubai Islands. So these communities have got, a huge demand. But at the same time, there is a lot of supply coming. So we do need to be conscious, and when we're helping people make the right decision, it's all about looking at a specific community, looking at their budget, looking at all their requirements, but trying to establish what would be the best choice for them to make. Because I think all opportunities aren't necessarily created equal, So establishing finding the real diamond in the rough, if you like, is really important when it comes to investing.
We've got 1 minute left with you, Simon. What's your outlook for Q4 then, though, now that we're in it?
Now we've just come back after the summer. September's seen a huge, rise in population. Again, we're sitting at about 5% year-on-year population growth, which is huge. So that demand is going to keep pushing property market forward, really, for the foreseeable. And there's not so much supply coming. The supply tends to get a bit delayed, and it's probably going to push into 26 and more into 27, 28, which is good couple of years away. So in the short term, there's certainly a very, very strong demand, and I can only see it going one way.
Thanks for joining us this morning. Q3 report time. Simon Baker is the Managing Director of Haus&Haus. Thank you very much for your time this morning.